They sold me, betrayed me, and pushed me from a 47th floor penthouse. I remember the wind, the lights, the impact. They thought they had erased me, a disposable secret. But they didn't bury a victim, they planted a seed of vengeance. My name is Dr. Eris Thorne, and the last sensation I remember was the biting New York wind whipping against my face as I fell 47 stories. It wasn't an accident. I was a leading sports therapist, trusted by champions, but my life ended because of the three people I should have been able to trust the most. My sister, Lena, whose jealousy was a quiet poison, orchestrated my downfall. My parents, drowning in gambling debts, sold me their own daughter to a monster, a ruthless tycoon named Alistair Finch, for a sum that barely covered their losses in Vegas. And finally, it was Alistair's sadistic son who gave me the final push from their Manhattan penthouse, his laughter echoing as the city lights blurred into streaks of fire and ice. They thought they had erased me, a disposable pawn in their games of greed and envy. They took my career, my dignity, and my life. But what they didn't know is that sometimes the end is just the beginning of a reckoning. If you're watching this right now, and you've ever felt the sharp sting of betrayal from someone who was supposed to protect you, let me know I'm not alone by tapping that like button, because this story is for you. They buried me, but they forgot I was a seed, ready to grow back from the concrete and claim what was mine. I blinked, and the blinding pain was gone. The scent of stale coffee and my sister's cheap perfume filled my nostrils instead of the acrid smell of city smog. I was sitting on the worn-out velvet couch in my old apartment, the one I'd left behind years ago. And there was Lena, perched on the armrest, scrolling through her phone with a smug look on her face. "Eris," she said, not even looking up. "This guy who makes fake diplomas. Think he's legit? I mean, who has time to actually study physical therapy? I just want to get my hands on those pro athletes." My blood ran cold. I knew this day. I remember this exact conversation. This was the day it all started, the day she bought the fake credentials that set the first domino falling toward my death. My breath hitched. This wasn't heaven or hell, this was a second chance. A terrifying, beautiful, and vengeful second chance. The universe had rewound the tape, and this time, I wasn't the naive older sister who would try to talk her out of it. This time, I knew the script, and I was going to rewrite the ending. I have to ask, if you were given a chance to go back and change one single day of your life, which day would it be? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. Because on this day, I wasn't going to save her from myself. I was going to help her dig her own grave. A strange calm washed over me. The panic was gone, replaced by a chilling clarity. In my past life, I had confessed to her, arguing for hours about ethics, legality, and the sheer stupidity of her plan. It had only made her resent me, branding me as a jealous gatekeeper of a world she felt entitled to. This time, I leaned back, a thoughtful expression on my face. "You know, Lena," I began, my voice even, "you have a point. The system is slow. It's designed to keep talented people like you out." Her eyes sharpened, surprised by my sudden agreement. I continued, "But if you're going to do this, you can't go with some random guy online. That's amateur hour." I took her phone, scrolled for a moment, and then typed in a name. "This person," I said, showing her a contact, "is discreet, expensive, but their work is flawless. They create an entire digital footprint, transcripts, records, everything. If you're going to build a career on a lie, at least build it on a solid foundation." She snatched the phone back, her face glowing with triumph. She saw this as my surrender, an admission that her way was better. She didn't see the hook hidden in the bait. I knew this forger. I knew from my past life that his solid foundation would eventually crumble under the first real FBI investigation, taking everyone with him. The first stone was laid, and she had placed it herself. The next step was to cut off her resources. Lena was reckless with money, a trait she inherited from our father. I knew his routine. He'd be home around 11 p.m. after a poker night, which was code for losing money he didn't have at an illegal gambling den. He'd be in a foul mood, looking for any excuse to unleash his frustration. That evening, Lena came home giddy, bags from high-end boutiques swinging from her arms. She'd used the money she'd scrounged for the fake diploma to go on a shopping spree, confident her new career would pay for it all. As she modeled a ridiculously expensive handbag in the mirror, I accidentally knocked a receipt from one of the bags onto the coffee table, right next to the ashtray where Dad always threw his keys. The timing was perfect. The front door slammed open. My father stormed in, his face a thundercloud. His eyes immediately landed on the receipt. I watched him pick it up, his knuckles turning white. $2,000 for a purse? He roared. The explosion was instantaneous. He ransacked her room, found the other bags, and confiscated her credit cards. Her source of funding was severed in one brutal, predictable confrontation. I simply stood in the kitchen, making tea, the picture of innocence. It's a terrible feeling when the place you're supposed to call home feels more like a war zone. If you've ever had to navigate a difficult family dynamic where money was the trigger, type survivor in the comments. You are seen, and you are not alone. With Lena financially cornered, it was time to present her with the perfect escape route, one that led directly off a cliff. A few days later, I made sure to leave my laptop open on the kitchen table, displaying a confidential email I had spent hours forging. It was an invitation for a last-minute, highly exclusive internship with the U.S. Olympic training team at their Colorado Springs facility. I fabricated details that would be irresistible to her. A generous stipend, accommodations at a luxury resort, and, most importantly, unparalleled access to the nation's most elite athletes. The stressful email that this was a discreet, word-of-mouth opportunity for a promising therapist with a ridiculously tight application deadline of midnight that very night. I then walked into the living room, feigning a panic attack. "I can't do this," I exclaimed dramatically, running my hands through my hair. "It's too much pressure, the application is a nightmare, and I'd have to drop everything to go. It's an amazing opportunity, but I don't think I'm ready." I watched from the corner of my eye as Lena's gaze flickered from my feigned distress to the glowing laptop screen. Her eyes narrowed with a familiar, predatory glint. She saw a golden ticket, and she believed its rightful owner was too weak to claim it. I knew that as soon as I left the room, she would pounce. She wouldn't just apply, she would steal my identity to do it, using my credentials to bolster the fake ones she was acquiring. The trap was set. All I had to do was wait for the snap. The crisp, thin air of Colorado Springs was a stark contrast to the suffocating atmosphere of my old life. I stood on the observation deck of the Olympic Training Center, looking down as the group of new interns filed into the main gymnasium. Among them, I spotted Lena. She was wearing expensive athletic wear, a confident smirk plastered on her face. She thought she had made it, that she had successfully leapfrogged over years of hard work to stand among the elite. She had no idea she was a mouse who had just walked into a lion's den. A warm hand touched my shoulder. "Eris, it's good to have you back with us," a familiar, kind voice said. It was Dr. Anya Sharma, my mentor from my first life, the woman whose belief in me had been a guiding light. She was the head of the evaluation committee. "I was so glad when you accepted my invitation to be my lead evaluator this year," she continued, smiling. "Let's go meet the new recruits." We walked to the front of the gymnasium. The interns fell silent. I watched Lena's eyes scan the panel of experts, her smug expression slowly freezing as her gaze landed on me. The color drained from her face. It was a look of pure, unadulterated shock, the kind you see when a ghost walks into a room. I gave her a small, tight smile. The game had just been elevated to a whole new level, and she was no longer a player. She was a pawn. My official title was lead evaluator, which gave me the authority to design the practical assessments for the interns. Dr. Sharma trusted me implicitly, giving me free rein to separate the truly gifted from the merely competent. My definition of gifted was simple: anyone who wasn't a complete fraud. The first assessment was a high-pressure diagnostic simulation. Each intern was given 10 minutes with a professional athlete complaining of shoulder pain and was required to identify the specific injury using only manual palpation and mobility tests. No MRIs, no X-rays. It was a test of pure, hands-on expertise. When it was Lena's turn, the silence in the room was deafening. She approached the athlete with a forced confidence, her hands hovering awkwardly over his shoulder. She poked and prodded vaguely, her movements clumsy and uncertain. The athlete wins, not from pain, but from her incompetence. So, it's, muscle fatigue, she finally declared, her voice wavering. I stepped forward, my face a mask of professional disappointment. Muscle fatigue? I countered coolly. Could you specify whether you suspect an impingement of the supraspinatus tendon or a potential labral tear, given the clicking he reported during external rotation? Lena just stared, her mouth agape. The other interns began to whisper. The charade was over before it had even truly begun. Have you ever been in a situation where you felt completely out of your depth, like an imposter just waiting to be found out? That feeling of your heart pounding in your chest is something else. Tell me about that moment in the comments. It takes real courage to share it. In that moment, Lena wasn't just failing a test, she was being unmasked. The public failure left Lena desperate. She needed someone successful to salvage her reputation, and she set her sights on Blake Harding, a star swimmer with a chiseled body and an ego to match. I knew from my past life that Blake's incredible stamina didn't come from hard training alone. It was fueled by a cocktail of illegal performance, enhancing substances. My plan was simple. During a team lunch, I made a point of discussing Blake's meticulous routine with another therapist, loud enough for Lena to hear. He's so meticulous, I said. He even has his own special electrolyte mix that he keeps in that unlabeled silver thermos. Said it was the key to his recovery. The bait was set. Lena, eager to prove she could get close to a star athlete, saw her chance. A few days later, just as officials from the U.S. anti-doping agency were making a surprise appearance for a random test, Lena spotted Blake heading toward the pool. In a dramatic gesture of help, she grabbed a silver thermos from his bag and ran to give it to him, right in front of the officials. Blake's face paled. The officials immediately sealed the thermos for testing. It tested positive for a powerful steroid. Blake was disqualified, his career in tatters. But the media storm didn't just consume him. It focused on the mysterious, unqualified female intern who had given him the evidence. Lena's face was everywhere, not as a rising star, but as the central figure in a major Olympic scandal. She was no longer just a loser. She became infamous. The fallout was immediate. Lena was expelled from the program in disgrace, a national pariah. I thought that was the end of it, but then my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. My heart stopped when I read the words. Falling 47 stories is a one-time experience, isn't it, sis? Or maybe not. She knew. She had come back too. The message continued with an address, a private suite at an exclusive medical clinic downtown. It was a trap, as blatant as a siren in the night. She was luring me into the lion's den. A part of me screamed to run, to disappear and start a new life. But another, darker part, the part forged in the fall, knew I couldn't just fall. This wasn't just about Lena anymore. This was about facing the monster she served. I walked into that clinic, my hand gripping a small, heavy object in my coat pocket. The room was dimly lit. Lena was sitting in a chair, a twisted smile on her face. And then, a figure emerged from the shadows. Alistair Finch, the man who had bought me like property. His eyes, cold and dead, locked onto mine. The air grew thick, heavy with the ghosts of the past. Right now, in this very moment, if you had to face your absolute biggest fear, would you run or would you fight? Type 1 for fight or 2 for run in the comments. I want to see who the fighters are out there. Because in that room, I knew there was no running. There was only the fight. Alistair chuckled, a low, guttural sound that oozed arrogance. Brave little girl, he sneezed, taking a step forward. Did you really think you could defy me? I bought you once. I can buy you 1,000 times over. You are nothing but an asset. Lena watched from her chair, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and cruel anticipation. She expected me to crumble. They both did. Instead, I smiled back at him, a slow, chilling smile that didn't reach my eyes. You're right, Alistair. You did buy me, I said, my voice deceptively calm. But you should have checked the return policy. With a fluid motion, I pulled the object from my pocket. It was a professional-grade therapeutic percussion massager, a tool I used to heal the world's greatest athletes. I switched it on, and it whirred to life with a low, menacing hum. Before he could process what was happening, I lunged forward. I didn't aim for his face or his chest. I drove the vibrating head of the device with surgical precision into the cluster of nerves just above his kneecap. It wasn't a punch, it was a targeted neurological assault. An unholy scream tore from his throat as his leg buckled, the intense vibration sending a lightning bolt of pure agony through his system. He crashed to the floor, clutching his leg. I stood over him, the massager still humming like an angry hornet. "You see, I know the human body," I whispered. "I know every weakness, every pressure point, every single way to break it." Lena was stunned, her face a mask of disbelief. The predator had become the prey. I turned my attention from the groaning man on the floor to my sister. "See, Lena," I said, my voice dangerously soft. "This is what happens when you play with monsters. Sometimes they turn on their masters." I knelt down beside Alistair, the massager still humming in my hand. "Here's the deal, Alistair. You want this pain to stop? You want to walk out of here?" He nodded vigorously, tears streaming down his face. I pointed the device at Lena. "Her. You'll make a scene. You'll attack her. Make it look convincing. Do that, and I'll call an ambulance instead of the police." It was a lie, of course, but a desperate man would believe anything. He looked from me to Lena, a flash of his old predatory instincts returning. Driven by pain and self-preservation, he scrambled to his feet and lunged at Lena, screaming obscenities. She screamed as he grabbed her, ripping her clothes off. It was chaos. And in that chaos, I quietly pressed the panic button on the clinic wall. The alarm blared. The scene was set. A violent tycoon, a terrified young woman, and me, the heroic sister who tried to intervene. We all face moments when we have to choose between two evils. If you were faced with a morally dubious but necessary choice for your survival, could you live with yourself afterward? Share your thoughts with a yes or no in the comments. The police would come and hear a story I had written for them, and Lena's carefully constructed trap would become her own prison. The police burst in to find a staged scene of chaos. Alistair was disheveled, Lena was sobbing hysterically, shaking and pointing at him. I stepped back, playing the shocked but calm professional who tried to defuse the situation. Alistair, remembering my silent threat, played his part, admitting to a violent outburst after a business deal with Lena went sour. It was messy, but it was working. Lena was being treated as the victim, and he was the attacker. But as the two officers began to gently lead Lena away for questioning, she caught my eye. She saw the cold, calculated triumph in my gaze, and something inside her snapped. The shell of the terrified victim was shattered. "It's her! It's all her fault," she screamed, her voice hoarse with hatred. "She orchestrated all this. Can't you see? She's not who you think she is." The police officers looked at each other, accustomed to the erratic behavior of trauma victims. "She's not even my sister." Lena screamed, the words tearing from her throat. "My parents found her. They adopted her. She's nothing, a piece of trash they picked up out of pity. You have no right to have our name, to live our life. You'll always be a stray dog. Have to feed." The room fell silent. The officers stared. Alistair looked confused. But I just stood there, the world tilting. The words hit me harder than a 47th story fall. It wasn't just a lie told in desperation. Deep inside, I felt the cold, hard truth. All the years of feeling like an outsider, the subtle differences in treatment, the inexplicable distance, it all suddenly clicked together with terrifying clarity. I wasn't their daughter. I was their charity case. The revelation didn't break me. It sets me free. The weight of a lifetime of trying to earn their love, a love that was never mine to begin with, evaporated. I was no longer their daughter bound by a twisted sense of duty. I was an independent agent of consequence. My father's downfall was the easiest to arrange. For years, his gambling addiction had been a ticking time bomb. In my first life, I tried to defuse it. In this one, I lit the fuse. I had quietly gathered evidence of his illegal activities and his massive debts to a particularly ruthless loan shark. I made 2 anonymous calls. The first was to the loan shark, giving him the exact location of a high-stakes underground poker game. The second was to the NYPD's Vice Squad, tipping them off to the same game. He was trapped. Whether the mob got to him first or the cops, his luck had finally run out. For my mother, the punishment had to be quieter, a slow burn of regret. I packed a single bag with her most cherished possessions and left it outside the apartment door. Inside, I placed a one-way bus ticket to a desolate town in Ohio and the last of my savings. The note was simple. You made your choice. I wasn't offering her an escape. I was condemning her to a life without the daughter she had so easily discarded. It's a painful thing to realize that sometimes the only way to save yourself is to let go of the people who are supposed to love you. If you've ever had to make the difficult decision to cut ties with a toxic family member for your own well-being, share a single word in the comments that describes the feeling you had afterwards. Freedom, guilt, peace? Your story matters. Alistair's son, Damien, was predictable. He was a creature of force and ego, and I knew he would not let his father's humiliation go unpunished. He did not come with lawyers or threats. He came in the middle of the night, breaking into my newly fortified apartment. He expected to find me sleeping, vulnerable. He was wrong. I was not there. I was in a control room 2 blocks away, watching him through a series of hidden cameras. He moved through the dark apartment with a predatory grace, a knife glinting in his hand. He was a sadist, like in my previous life, a man who relished the hunt. He kicked open the bedroom door, finding it empty. Frustrated, he turned, and that was when the trap fell. A series of high-intensity strobe lights, calibrated to frequencies that would cause disorientation and convulsions, erupted from the wagers panels hidden in the walls. At the same time, a high-frequency audio device emitted a piercing, unbearable sound, aimed at his inner ear to destroy his balance. Damien dropped the knife, clutching his head and screaming as his world disintegrated into a nightmare of flashing lights and numbing noise. He staggered, disoriented and nauseous, slamming into furniture. He was no longer a predator, he was just a cornered animal, utterly outmatched. The final piece of the trap was a silent alarm system that alerted the authorities. They would not find a victim. They would find an intruder, armed and incapacitated, trapped in a non-lethal but brutally effective security system. His reign of terror, both in this life and the one before, was over. Not with a bang, but with a debilitating, mind-shattering buzz. With all the pieces cleared from the board, an eerie silence descended upon my life. The fires of vengeance had burned away all that was toxic, and in the ashes I found myself alone, but not alone. There was no triumphant gloating, only a deep, empty peace. I had reclaimed my life, but I had done so by walking the thin line between justice and darkness. To be truly free, I knew I had to face my own actions. I did not call a lawyer. I drove myself to the downtown police station, a calm settling over me that I had never felt before. This was not a surrender, it was a declaration. I was ready to own my story, every part of it. As I climbed the stone steps, I stopped. Standing there, under the porch light, was Dr. Sharma. She looked at me not with disappointment or pity, but with a deep understanding that left me speechless. Beside her were some of the athletes I had helped come back from near-career-ending injuries. They weren't there to judge me. They were there to stand with me. In that moment, I realized that family isn't always blood. It's the people who show up when the rest of the world turns its back. I had lost a family that had abandoned me, but along the way, I had found a family that never would. I took a deep breath and walked toward them, toward my future. Walking toward them, I felt the last remnants of the vengeful ghost I had become fade into the cool night air. The legal battle that followed was complicated, but I was not alone. Dr. Sharma and a network of people I had helped over the years stood by me, speaking not of my revenge, but of who I was. They spoke of the healer I had been and could be again. My story became less about the fall and more about the fight to get back up. The past doesn't go away, its scars remain, like a map of where you've been. But they don't have to determine your destination. I learned that family isn't an obligation. It's a shelter you build with people who see your worth even as you're covered in the ash of your own fallen world. My hands, once instruments of calculated pain, gradually learned how to heal. The journey back was quiet, not filled with dramatic confrontations, but with small, daily acts of reclaiming my soul. My story of revenge was over, but the story of rebuilding my life had only just begun. If you believe that everyone has the power to tear off a painful chapter and write a new, beautiful one for themselves, then hit the subscribe button and join this community of survivors. Let's write the next chapters together, because the best stories are the ones we live after we think the book is closed.